Well, hello, and welcome to this live telephone town hall meeting. We appreciate you joining us. It looks like we have a couple of you dialed in early on our inbound participant line. Thank you for being on for this live virtual forum with your Congressman, Tom Malinowski. We'll have him on in just a moment here, and we'll be holding this live virtual forum with thousands of your fellow residents in the 7th Congressional District of New Jersey this morning. So thanks for joining us. This call is an opportunity for residents of the 7th District to ask questions, share concerns, and get updates on the latest from Congress. So we'll have your congressman on in a moment. Let me go over how you can participate in this event, and we'll go ahead and get started today. If you want to submit a question for our live Q&A today with your congressman, all you have to do is press 0 on your phone to speak to an operator. They'll take down some notes and put you in the queue. Then in a few minutes here, we'll start taking questions live and asking Representative Malinowski to answer those. We are dialing out to 38,100 households around New Jersey's 7th Congressional District, and we do want to focus on issues most relevant to seniors this morning. We will definitely take questions on other topics as well, but we will want to prioritize questions and issues relevant to seniors during this 1-hour forum. If you have any questions on any topics, you can submit them to one of our operators by pressing 0 for our Q&A with Congressman Malinowski that's about to start. 0 will get you one of our operators. They'll take some notes, and you can either ask your question live or you can let your operator know if you want me to read it. Of course, first off here, I will ask the congressman to provide you with some updates from D.C. We'll get you all updated with the current information, and then again, we'll start Q&A, and that'll be most of our forum is that Q&A. So while you're listening, be thinking about questions you might like to ask the congressman. Again, we'll focus on senior relevant questions today, but if you have a question on any topic, we're going to be taking lots of questions. Press 0, get your question to one of our operators. Again, you're welcome to ask it live, but if you're not comfortable going live, that's no problem at all. Let your operator know if you prefer to have me read your question over the air instead. Whatever's more comfortable for you is fine with us. Finally, you can also press 7 if you'd like to get email updates from Congressman Malinowski's office moving forward. So that's 0 to submit a question for Q&A. And if you'd like to get email updates from the Congressman's office moving forward to get the most current information on the issues that affect you in the 7th Congressional District of New Jersey, press 7. Give us your email address to get those occasional email updates from your congressman. All right, we're about to get started here, folks. Just a couple more reminders. 0 to submit a question for Q&A. 7 if you'd like to get email updates from the congressman's office moving forward. And again, for those of you submitting questions, you can let your operator know if you want me to read them over the air. Otherwise, I'm happy to hear from you live, and we'll hear from the congressman live in just a moment here. Thanks again for joining us. Let's go ahead and get started. It's my pleasure to kick off this live forum by turning it over to your congressman, Tom Malinowski. Please go ahead, Representative.
Thanks so much, and hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. There's a lot to talk about going on in our country and around the world. So we wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to have a conversation with all of you. I love doing these town hall meetings, whether they're live in a high school auditorium or a teletown hall like this. I've done over 100 of them since I was elected. And I always learn a lot, and I hope you guys get something out of it as well. So a lot has happened in our country and our economy the last couple of years that affects seniors and all of us. We are fortunately, after tremendous sacrifice and hard work, coming out of the pandemic crisis. Life is coming back to normal in a lot of good ways, and we were successful in this period in bringing America's economy basically back from the dead. We kept most of our small businesses alive and enabled them to keep their employees on payroll. Unemployment is lower than it's been in decades. We were able to keep our municipal budgets whole with assistance from Congress and the federal government. That allowed all of our municipalities in New Jersey to keep services, including services for seniors, going without having to raise our property taxes. As I'm sure you all know, we finally passed an infrastructure bill in Washington to start fixing our bridges and our tunnels and our roads, helping all of us save money, cutting back on that, what we call the pothole tax, the hundreds of dollars that we spend every year on car repairs because the roads aren't properly maintained. But we have a lot of new problems in the economy. People came out of the pandemic with money to spend, and Americans are spending money at a record pace right now, but the supply chains have not caught up. We still have factories shut down all over the world. We have all kinds of constraints in getting goods to stores, which have resulted in inflation and increases in cost of living. And now this horrible war, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, has led to a huge spike in gas prices in just the last 2 or 3 weeks, and all of us are feeling the pain of that. So let me tell you about some of the things that I'm working on, that we're trying to do in Washington. And here I'm going to particularly focus on issues that affect cost of living for seniors. One problem that we've been struggling with in New Jersey ever since 2017 is the loss of our state and local tax deductions, our ability to deduct our high property taxes, our state taxes from our federal returns. And I know particularly seniors who are living on fixed income, who want to stay in New Jersey close to their kids and their grandkids. This has been a particularly great burden. And ever since I've been elected, I've been trying to do something about it. Our latest proposal, a bill that I've introduced in Congress in the last few weeks, would restore the SALT deduction, the full SALT deduction for the vast majority of New Jerseyans, for virtually every homeowner in our state. And we figured out a way to do it over 10 years that actually over that time raises money for the federal government, and we would spend that money in the bill that we've proposed to create 2 new Medicare benefits for our seniors. We would enable Medicare to cover both vision services and hearing services, so Medicare would pay for hearing aids. If we can get some action in the Senate on some of the proposals that President Biden was making in that Build Back Better bill, I'm fairly confident that we can get the SALT proposal considered as part of any such package, and we can talk about the prospects of that some more in the Q&A. Another thing that we're trying to get through the Senate, we've already done it in the House, is a long-last reform to how we price prescription drugs in America. We all know that Americans pay way more than our counterparts in Europe and Canada and every other advanced country for prescription drugs. I have long believed that we should allow Medicare some degree of power to negotiate prescription drug prices on behalf of Medicare recipients, on behalf of seniors in our country, to negotiate with pharmaceutical companies to get the price of prescription drugs down. We have, I think, enough support in the Senate, including from our friend Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia, to move that reform forward. And it's going to be a big priority for me this year in the Congress. That legislation would also cap the out-of-pocket expenses that seniors pay under Medicare for prescription drugs to $2,000 a year. And it would cap monthly payments for insulin for those folks who need it at $35 a month. It's just ridiculous that we have people in America paying up to $1,000 a month for insulin, a drug that was invented over 100 years ago. This is not something that was just invented, that pharmaceutical companies just got a patent for. Makes no sense that it should be that expensive. And then finally, we have a long-term challenge of preserving the viability of the Social Security system. We have time, but we have to use that time wisely. I am a co-sponsor in the House of something called the Social Security 2100 Act, which has been endorsed by the AARP and a lot of other groups that advocate for seniors. It would basically keep Social Security solvent through the year 2100 and beyond by applying the payroll tax that is currently capped at $142,000 of income. We don't pay payroll tax above $142,000 of income. It would resume that payroll tax on income over $400,000 a year. So the top 0.5% of Americans would actually start paying their fair share, the same rate as the rest of us, and that would be enough to make the system viable and actually to make the benefits a little bit more generous for all of our Social Security recipients. So those are a few of the things that I'm working on. I know that you'll probably have questions on some of those, but also on other things that are happening in our economy, in our country, and around the world, and I'm happy to respond to any questions or concerns that folks may have. So with that, let's turn it over to you, and I'll do my best to answer your questions in the time that we have. Thanks.
Thank you again, Congressman. Appreciate you being with us this morning. And thanks to everybody who's already submitted questions. A reminder, we're going to be taking questions the remainder of this forum for about the next 50 minutes. We have Victoria and Glen Gardner, Karen and Hunterdon, and Mark in Mendon Township up in line first. So hang tight, and plenty more questions in line behind that. If you do have a question for Q&A, press 0. Give that question to an operator. You can either go live with your question or let your operator know that you want me to read it live, and I'm happy to do it for you if you're not happy and if you're not comfortable going live. And one more quick note here. If you do need assistance from the Congressman's office, they can assist with accessing public benefits such as Social Security and Medicare, as well as passports and visas, immigration and naturalization services, veterans benefits, or in resolving issues with federal agencies such as the IRS or FEMA, as well as much more. If you would like to request assistance, we ask that you please visit malinowski.house.gov/casework. Again, if you need the Congressman's assistance, you can reach out to his office at malinowski.house.gov/casework. You'll also be able to leave a voicemail at the end of this forum if you need that type of assistance. And, of course, we're going to continue taking questions the entire forum. We're going to Victoria first, and thank you to Victoria for joining us this morning. She's asked me to read her question. She asks, I am curious about the Congressman's position or further information about direct contracting with Medicare. The Biden administration is calling it REACH. Corporations are trying to get involved in the Medicare system. Thoughts on that question from Victoria, Congressman Malinowski?
Direct contracting with Medicare, I wonder if you could say a little bit more about that, Victoria.
Let's bring her in. Victoria, do you mind expanding on that at all?
Well, I was trying to get a lot more information about it. It seems as though that the Social Security system has tried to get a new way of not Social Security. Medicare system is trying to get a new way of collecting and paying for Medicare services rather than a fee-for-service. And they're involving the doctors with it, but certain groups are becoming more and more concerned that corporate America is getting much more involved in the Medicare system with this process. And I think it's in the testing stages and the discussion stages right now, but it's becoming a little more concerning.
Yeah. So, okay, I get it. And look, my approach to these things is that I'm always open to new ideas. I'm always open to testing out new ideas, whether it's a pilot project or a study. I'm not wedded to. I support the Medicare system. I'm not wedded to doing things exactly the way we've always done them, but I'm also very wary of anything that might smack of privatization of the system. We have a lot of lobbyists in Washington, and most of them are not looking out for your interests. Most of them are looking out for the interests of those who can afford to hire lobbyists, which is generally our corporations, our pharmaceutical companies, our insurance companies. they've every right to do it. They've every right to advocate for their interests. But those of us who represent you, who represent the people, we have to be very, very vigilant that any changes to the system that corporate lobbyists are proposing are in fact in everybody's interest. And so, I will be open-minded to new ideas. There may be ways of doing things more efficiently that will save taxpayers money, but I'm not going to support anything just because a corporate lobbyist gives me a fancy PowerPoint presentation. I want to be absolutely sure that any changes we make improve services or lower costs for our seniors, for Medicare recipients. Thanks so much,
Congressman. Appreciate you. And thank you, Victoria, for being our first question. We're going to go to Mark next, and then we've got Karen and Tom behind that. Let's go to Mark in Mendham Township. Mark, thanks for waiting. You're live. Go ahead, please, sir.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Sure can.
Yes.
Good. Hi, Congressman. I appreciate the chance and your availability to speak with us. I am concerned about the effect of gas inflation on and inflation in general on the ability of those who help us seniors in our society and provide services to us seniors to afford to be able to continue to be in New Jersey and serve us. We're not alone. We can't just assume that seniors' interests alone are part of society. We have to think of those who cannot, who are struggling with their own budgets, and under the stress of this particular time where we are being squeezed by gas prices and other supply chain prices. What are you thinking about as needed to allow those who are really stressed by these inflationary pressures to continue to afford to serve in New Jersey?
Absolutely, and I completely agree with your concern. You mentioned one particular problem related to gas prices. Folks who serve seniors who have to drive to work. Most folks who provide home care for seniors who work in our healthcare industry as nurses and nurses' aides. These are not people making a lot of money, and if they have to drive far to get to work, then their cost of living has increased significantly in the last few months, and frankly, particularly in the last 3 weeks since the war in Ukraine began. Gas is averaging over $4 a gallon in New Jersey right now. That is a huge, huge burden for consumers, for small businesses, and we got to do everything in our power to try to bring those costs down. So what can we do? I'm a practical person. I want to know I don't want to complain about it. I want to know what the solutions are. So first we have to understand why this has happened. Number one, we had a period of time in 2020 and 2021 when Americans pretty much, we drove a lot less, we flew a lot less, we were using a lot less gas, and so oil companies stopped drilling. Oil companies in the United States significantly reduced production, and other oil-producing states like Saudi Arabia, for example, also agreed to very significant cuts in production. Demand is back up because the economy is roaring back to life. People are driving, people are flying, people are traveling. But the oil companies in these oil-producing countries did not increase production in time to provide the supply that would match our demand. So what can we do about that? Number one, Biden has started to do this, which is to release more oil from our strategic petroleum reserve and to get agreements from other countries that have their own reserves to release oil as well. We've negotiated an agreement to release 60 million barrels initially. That sounds like a lot, but it's actually not a lot. So we need to do more. Number two, we've got a lot of oil companies in America that are sitting on approved permits to drill in the United States, and they're not drilling. They got these leases from the government. Biden actually has approved more oil drilling leases on public lands in his first year than Trump did in his first year. But the companies are just sitting on these permits. I think we need a rule that basically says to them, use it or lose it. Give them less time to actually start production of oil on the leases that we give them before we take them away. And just a lot of public pressure on the oil companies to do the right thing rather than keeping prices high by keeping production low. A third thing we can do is consider some kind of windfall profits tax on these oil companies and perhaps use it to fund rebates for low and middle income Americans so that we can better afford the higher price of energy. Look, I don't mind Chevron and ExxonMobil trying to make a buck. They're private companies. But at a time when we're asking ordinary Americans to sacrifice because of this war in Ukraine, I don't think it's too much to ask these companies that are making record profits to be a little patriotic and to contribute to that sacrifice. So that's something I would support. And we also have to pressure the Saudis and these other countries that are sitting on a lot of unused capacity to be producing energy, to be producing oil, to step up to the plate. And we have all kinds of tools of leverage that we can be using, and I've been urging Biden to do that. So that's what I would do in the short term. Those are some things that in the next few weeks could actually begin to reduce the price of gas in our country. But beyond this year, I think the lesson, I hope we would all agree, I think the lesson of this crisis is that it is really dangerous for us to be as dependent on oil as we are today. We actually produce more oil in America than we use, but we are still at the mercy of Russia and Saudi Arabia and Venezuela and all these other countries because the price of gas is determined by global supply and demand. So as long as we are this reliant on oil and natural gas, we are going to be at the mercy of these countries. We are going to be buffeted by conflict and disruptions to supply chains around the world. The only long-term solution to this, the only way to really become energy independent is for America to move faster in the direction of clean energy. We've got to become the world's clean energy superpower, not just because we want to save the planet, but it's the only way to keep energy costs down sustainably, consistently in the long run and to be independent of these foreign dictatorships that otherwise can exert power over us. Thanks so much for the question.
Yeah, I really appreciate you. Thank you, Mark, for being with us. And a quick reminder here, if you'd like to get email updates from your congressman's office, press 7. Speak to one of our operators, give them your best email address. We'll get you those occasional email updates on the issues that affect you in the 7th Congressional District. So again, 7. If you'd like to get email updates, let's go to Karen up next here. Karen, Hunterdon County, thanks for joining us and thanks for waiting. Go ahead. You're on with Congressman Malinowski.
Hi. Good morning, Congressman. Yes, Karen Becker. I'm a Hunterdon County resident. I'm one of your constituents, but this morning, too, I'm also on as a member of the Sierra Club. And first of all, we'd like to thank you for the work that you did to help stop the Pennies pipeline, especially through Hunterdon County. It was a big help. And seniors, we don't necessarily think about climate environment, and this is probably a very good question as a follow-up from the last question that was asked. But many of us experienced quite a bit of flooding this last year with Ida, and it caused a lot of damage to our homes and property. So could you maybe go into a little bit more detail of the discussions that are taking place in Washington regarding the initiatives for clean energy, and especially those that may impact New Jersey?
Thank you, Karen. And thanks so much, Karen, for bringing that issue home for us. You know, sometimes when people talk about climate change, it sounds like just a bunch of scientists talking about the future. But it's here, it's now. Climate change for For those of us who live in Hunterdon County, Somerset County, Union County, who experienced Hurricane Ida, we know that it's 4 feet of water in our basement. It's about our security in our homes, our safety. And so the only answer to it is, of course, in the short run, we got to get relief for people who were hit hard. We got to invest in our flood control infrastructure, which is something we're going to do big time thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure bill that we got done last year. I'm going to be working on getting a lot of that money coming back home to New Jersey and to the counties that were hit hardest by Ida in particular, to make sure that we're better protected against the next storm. But in the longer term, the only solution is, again, make America the clean energy superpower. We have the technology, as they say. We have the imagination. We have the potential to be that country, to be the world leader in solar and wind power and renewables. And all it requires is for the federal government to create the right incentives for the private sector and for consumers who want to go in this direction already. What I'd like to do is use tax credits in a big way to make it more affordable for folks to buy electric vehicles, to transform the way we heat our homes. Not to force anyone to do any of this stuff, but just to make it more affordable, so that if we choose to do that, we're more free to do so, and to incentivize our utilities that generate electricity to accelerate the transition to using renewables to produce the power that drives our cars and heats our homes. Again, we know how to do this. If we do it, not only do we end up saving the planet, we create millions of jobs in our country, and we ensure that America leads the world in this transition.
Thank you again, Congressman, and thank you so much, Karen, for being a part of our forum and for the work you do as well. We're going to go to Tom right away next in Belmead. Tom, thank you for waiting. You're live. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, Congressman Malinowski. My name is Tom Blaney. I live in Belmead, and I have one of these telephone companies that allow robocalls to the extent that they're extremely bothersome. And of course, we all know that what they do is they target seniors, which I think is terribly unfair. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe you and maybe even a congressman from Connecticut had said that you guys were going to put an end to it. Well, that was a long time ago, and I cannot believe we have not put an end to robocalls, calls coming through to our home, even on our own number. It's just incredibly unbelievable. I just can't believe it's still going on.
I feel your pain. We did pass a bill in my first term in office to go after the robocall industry, and one of the things it did is that it required the phone companies, the carriers, to install systems and technologies to enable customers to better block those calls. I think it's working, at least for me and others I've spoken to. It's working at least some of the time. I know I get a lot of calls now that are just labeled potential spam on my phone, so that I can just ignore it. It doesn't stop the phone from ringing, but I know that it's a spam call. If you don't have that with your phone company, you should ask them, because they are supposed to provide that functionality for you. It's not perfect because it is hard to fight the technology that enables the scam artists from doing that. As you may know, you can be a scam artist anywhere in the world. You can be in India, you can be in Russia, you can be in China, and you can spoof an American phone number so that it seems like you're calling from the United States and call somebody in the United States. So there's no perfect solution to it, but we did pass legislation that I think made things better for at least some people. And you have every right to demand better from your phone company if you feel like they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Meanwhile, I've been looking at other scams that are out there. One thing that really bothers me is political fundraising scams. I'm in the politics business myself, and it just really pisses me off when I see political action committees and other politicians use deceptive tactics to raise money, which often are directed at seniors. There are political action groups, for example, that will send emails out to thousands of people, again, usually targeting seniors, claiming that they're raising money for a political cause or political candidate, and they end up using 95% of that money or 99% of it to pay them their own salaries. Those are called scam tax, and I've introduced a bill to ban that practice. So very, very interested in protecting everybody from that kind of fraudulent behavior. Sometimes it's a cat and mouse game, but we're always aiming to do better. Thank you.
Thank you again, Congressman, and appreciate having Tom on. We're going to go to TC in Stockton up next here. TC, you're live. Go ahead, please. TC, it looks like TC wants me to read this one. Sorry about that, TC. He's saying, I'm confused about the Social Security. Did I understand right that there's a group of people that are at a certain income level? Is there an income level that will not be taxed for Social Security? If yes, why?
Thanks, TC. So under current law, we support the Social Security system by paying a payroll tax. If you make X amount of money a year, some percentage of that is going to go to support the Social Security system and Medicare. But that tax is capped at $142,000 of income a year. So you pay the payroll tax up to $142,000 of income, but above that, you're not paying the payroll tax at all. So if you're making $1 million a year, you're only paying that payroll tax on the first $142,000 of income. The rest, you're not paying the payroll tax. So the bill that I support, it's interesting. It would keep the cap at $142,000, but starting at $400,000 of income, you start paying the payroll tax again. So you'd be, let's say you're making $1 million a year, you'd make it on the first 142, and you'd make it on all your income between $400,000 and $1 million. I think that's more equitable, number one, because under the current system, people making millions of dollars a year actually end up paying a much lower rate of tax to support Social Security, and it would raise enough money to keep the Social Security system solvent for all of us through the year 2100 and beyond. I hope that clarifies it.
Thank you again, Congressman. Appreciate you. And thank you to TC for our last question. Let's go to Walter in Bloomsbury. Quick reminder here, folks, that if you'd like to get email updates from your congressman's office, press 7 before we get to the end of this forum here. Give your best email to an operator. We'll get you added to that email update list. All right, we've got Walter live now. Walter, thanks and welcome.
Yeah, good morning, Congressman. I'd like to know what the status is on getting refugees from Ukraine to this country and what would happen, how much would the government support people coming in if you open your house to them? It looks like Europe is really getting overrun, and I'm looking to us for help.
Yep. So let me start with something that we have already done, and that is to provide temporary protective status, or TPS status, to Ukrainians who are already in the United States. What that means is, if you're here and your visa is about to expire, we're not going to kick you out. You don't have to go home to Ukraine for as long as this crisis is going on. So that's one thing Biden has done at our request. Number two, to your question, refugee admissions. We almost shut down refugee admissions to America during the previous administration. There was, under President Obama, there was an annual cap and intake of a little over 100,000 refugees a year. Under President Trump, that went down to almost zero. And so we're now in the process of kind of rebuilding that system that enables refugees to come to America and get some support from their communities, because in that first year, there does need to be a lot of support in helping new refugees find housing and find new jobs. And so we've had a hard time ramping up. We took in, as you know, tens of thousands of refugees from Afghanistan, which tested the system even more. It was the right thing to do. I pushed hard for that. But excuse me, we're at a point where we're taking hundreds of thousands of more people in the short run would be very hard. The good news is, yes, Europe is being overrun, but Europe is being very, very generous. So Ukrainians can cross that border from Ukraine to Poland or Romania or Hungary, and they are immediately given support by the European Union. And so in the short run, much of that capacity is going to be absorbed by our European allies. It's nice to see them stepping up and meeting more than their share of this burden. I would also say that most of the Ukrainians who are leaving their country right now are not yet interested in permanently resettling in the United States or Western Europe. As you may know, the Ukrainian rule is that they allow women and children to leave, but if you're a man between the ages of 18 and 60, you're not allowed to leave because they expect you to stay and fight for your country. So a lot of the refugees are women and kids and seniors who feel like they're leaving temporarily just for a few weeks to be safe, but they very much want to go back and rejoin their men of fighting age in a country that they hope will be free of Russian occupation and aggression soon. I don't know if that's going to happen. I hope it will happen. If it doesn't, then we have a much longer term challenge of finding permanent resettlement for these Ukrainian refugees. And I will certainly advocate that the United States take our fair share, even as the Europeans take by far the largest share. Thanks so much for your question.
Yep, appreciate it. Thank you again, Walter. Let's go right to Tom in Oldwick next. Tom, thanks for joining. You're alive. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, this is Tom from Oldwick. And Congressman, it was gratifying to hear you say that there might be light at the end of the tunnel for vision care benefits under Medicare. I'm wondering whether the same might be said for dental in my lifetime, or at least the lifetime of my teeth.
Thank you, Tom. I strongly support expanding Medicare coverage to cover dental. It was something that we had proposed in that Build Back Better bill originally. Of all of the new Medicare services, dental would be the most expensive. Vision and hearing, also important, can be done a bit more affordably than dental. And so it becomes harder, right, legislatively, because we don't want to be adding more and more to the deficit. We want to find ways to pay for these things. I think we can pay for it. I'd like to see corporations actually paying a minimum tax in America. I think it's ridiculous that companies like Amazon and FedEx get away with paying basically no federal tax year after year. So that's something we have proposed in that legislation, real corporate tax reform, to pay for some of these benefits that I think absolutely should be covered by Medicare. So we're going to keep working at it. I think vision and hearing is just a little easier because it costs less. And so the SALT deduction bill, which I've proposed, as I mentioned, raises enough money to pay for both of those. It does not raise enough money all by itself to pay for Medicare dental. So that's where we are.
Thank you again, Congressman. Thank you, Tom. And we'll go to John in Highbridge next. Hey, John.
Hello,
welcome.
Tom.
Go ahead.
This is John Hickson from Mrs. Riley's.
Oh, hey, John.
How are you?
Good to hear your voice. I'm good.
You were talking about the tax deductions for homeowners for their property taxes.
Yep.
And I'm concerned about people that rent. It's almost as though renters are subsidizing the wealthy. They don't get any of those benefits. The landlord gets to make a tax deduction for his business, for the interest and principal payments or whatever for the building, but the renter gets nothing. I was wondering if that could be added into your plan.
So it's a really fair question. I would say you're right. The renter doesn't get anything directly, but I think it stands to reason that high property taxes in New Jersey, especially if they're not deductible on the federal return, get passed on to renters, right? So if your landlord isn't getting the deduction that he or she might have gotten before Congress took that away in 2017, they're spending more and they're going to pass that on to renters, and rents are going to be higher. Doesn't guarantee that if we give them the deduction back that they'll pass the savings on to renters, but the market pressures there would I think would argue for landlords to do that, because any landlord that does do that is probably going to fill up their units faster. So it's not a guarantee, and it may not be a fully satisfying answer to you, but I do think there's a relationship between the SALT deduction that landlords either do or don't receive and the amount of rent that they charge. Thanks so much.
And thank you again, Congressman. I did want to mention just one more time here that we can, if you need assistance from the Congressman's office, you can reach out online through his casework portion of his website. But there are a couple of constituents that already spoke to an operator today, and they've determined that you're going to get a call back from the Congressman's office already, so these couple folks don't need to reach out. Carol in Short Hills and Annette in Union. We're already going to go ahead and have the Congressman's office follow up with you offline. So you've got some issues that we can't really deal with in this general forum, but they're going to follow up, so you can expect a call. And for the rest of you, if you do need any assistance from the Congressman's office, they can assist with accessing public benefits such as Social Security and Medicare, as well as passports, visas, immigration and naturalization services, veterans benefits, or resolving issues with federal agencies like the IRS or FEMA, as well as much more. If you need assistance, we please ask that you visit malinowski.house.gov/casework. Again, malinowski.house.gov/casework, or stay on for this next 15 minutes of our forum, and at the end you can stay on and leave a voicemail message for the Congressman along with your contact information and get a call back. Let's go ahead and go to our next question here. This one comes to us live from Ken in Westfield. Hey, Ken. Thanks for waiting. You're live. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, hi, and thanks for all that you do, and especially your statement on the war in Ukraine, which was very heartfelt, detailed, and really appreciated it. I have two questions. One is about the gas tax, federal and state. When gas prices at the pump go up, it disproportionately affects seniors on fixed income and lower income workers. So would you be amenable to cutting back or removing gas taxes to lower the price at the pump? And question number two relates to Medicare. I read something that Medicare was going to pay for COVID testing to reimburse if you buy it at the drugstore. Do you know if that's in the works or has happened, or how we find out about it?
Sure. Thanks, Ken. First, to start with your second question, there was a problem that needed fixing there when the Biden administration announced that the at-home COVID tests would be free, that they would have to be covered by our insurance companies. There was a little loophole. It didn't apply to Medicare. So I led an appeal. I got about 100 of my colleagues in the House and the Senate to sign a letter to President Biden telling him to fix that problem and make sure that these tests would be covered by Medicare as well. And the administration agreed with us and announced that they would be making that change. So that should be in place right now. And if you need any help from our office and figuring out how that works for you or for anybody you know, we'll get back to you with those details. On your question on the gas tax, so the federal gas tax is 18 cents a gallon. I would be open to a gas tax holiday on the condition that we could make sure that the oil companies pass that savings down to consumers, and that's been the tricky part. The gas tax that we pay is not imposed at the pump. It's not something that the gas station pays to the federal government, charges us and then pays to the federal government. It's actually imposed closer to the production point of the oil. So the oil company pays the tax to the government, and then they sell the oil to the refinery, and the refinery sells the oil or the gas to gas stations. And we've been around and around on this, and it's hard to figure out a way to ensure that those savings are passed down all the way to the consumer. So another alternative that I've considered is basically a windfall profits tax on the big oil companies. They made record profits last year, and they're going to exceed that this year with the price of gas being where it is. And rather than using the revenue from that tax to cover a gas tax holiday, just make it a rebate that is paid directly to working class and middle class Americans, those who can least afford the hike in gas prices that we have seen. That might work better because we could guarantee that people actually get the savings, and it might actually be worth more than just the 18 cents a gallon that we could save them by waiving the federal gas tax. 18 cents is not a lot when gas costs $4.30, $4.40 a gallon. So I want to make sure whatever we do is really felt. So those are some thoughts about it. I'm open to it, but I think there may be some better ways.
Thanks again, Congressman. Thank you to Ken in Westfield. We're going to go to Janet in Milford, who's asked me to read this question from her. Let me get her up real quick here. She's asking, what is Congressman Malinowski doing for seniors as far as prescriptions go? Everything is made in China, and the cost is way too high. We need to bring it all back to the states. Can you take this concern on for Janet in Milford, please, Congressman?
Thank you so much, and thanks, Janet. I covered this a little bit in my opening statement. I very, very strongly support legislation that would, number one, allow Medicare to finally start negotiating with our drug companies to get the cost of drugs down. Two, put in place an annual out-of-pocket cap for seniors on Medicare. What we proposed in the House, what we passed in the House would cap annual out-of-pocket expenditures at $2,000 per Medicare recipient, and in particular cap monthly costs of insulin, which is one of the big offenders as far as drugs that cost way too much, to cap monthly insulin costs at $35 per month. That passed the House. It was part of the Build Back Better bill, which, as you all know, ran into a lot of trouble in the Senate. But we've had some movement in the Senate the last couple of weeks to pass a slimmed-down bill, a much smaller, less ambitious bill that still includes those prescription drug pricing provisions. So I'm going to keep on fighting for that. You also mentioned the problem that a lot of the pharmaceutical drugs and the ingredients for the drugs, even if the drug is assembled in the United States, come from China, come from other countries. And we're working to address that problem in a bill called the America Competes Act. It's to basically fix our supply chain problems. I wrote a major part of that bill that would set up a program at the U.S. Department of Commerce to incentivize companies bringing manufacturing back home to America, manufacturing of things that are critical to our security here at home. And that could be everything from microchips, which are, we have a huge microchip shortage that's contributing to high car prices and high prices for a lot of other goods that we buy, to personal protective equipment, but also including pharmaceutical drug ingredients. I don't want to be dependent on China for stuff that keeps Americans alive in a crisis where China in the future might hold some of that back. And so we got this bill through the House. We have a different version in the Senate, but I have a lot of optimism since there's support in both the House and Senate that we can agree on something to send to President Biden soon. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you once again. Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, Janet in Milford, for our last question. We're going to Carolyn in Far Hills for our next one. Hey, Carolyn, thanks for waiting, and you're live. Carolyn, can you hear me there?
Are you're talking to me in Far Hills or somebody in Short Hills? Carolyn in Short Hills.
We've got you, Carolyn. You can go ahead.
Okay. Well, I just wondered when, there are a lot of permits for the drilling for the oil companies, and apparently those have been issued, but there's such difficult restrictions. The oil companies are not going to invest money in drilling if they aren't guaranteed a profit. That's what they do. They make profits. They are not part of the government. And so I was just wondering when Congress was going and the White House would loosen those restrictions so that we can have more drilling here. We could be energy independent. And I don't think, as Pete Buttigieg says, people should just drive electric vehicles. If you work at Walmart, do you think you're going to go out and buy a $60,000 or $80,000 electric car to drive to work? I mean, that is so insulting to people that are not very, financially well off. Or if you work at ShopRite, you can't afford to drive an electric car to work. And so we're going to need oil and gas for at least a couple of more weeks, maybe years. It's just insane to think that everyone's going to get an electric vehicle. Fit your garage and your electric system in your house or, you wouldn't do it in an apartment, but condo, whatever. And that's also very expensive. My neighbor did it. I think it cost him $12,000 to be able to charge his car. So I'm just wondering, that is so obtuse to say that everybody can have an electric car and they should get one within the next 2 weeks. And, so that you don't have to pay high gas prices. No, that's not the answer. The answer is to allow people to do more drilling, open up the Keystone Pipeline. That's where, there's no accidents with shipping on trucks and trains, shipping the oil. It's much better to do it that way than to have a pipeline. The pipeline needs to be finished, and we need to use it for a few years. It was going on fine. I don't understand why all the Democrats do not want us to have oil independence until we can have windmills in everyone's backyard. And then
Carolyn, I'm going to stop you here just because we have only 7 minutes left in our forum. I'd like to get an answer from the congressman. So, Congressman Malinowski, can you take on this concern from Carolyn, please?
Sure. Thank you, Carolyn. And look, I do want to make it cheaper for people to have electric cars, but I totally agree with you. It's dumb to say that we can like all have electric cars in the next 2 weeks. And meanwhile, people need to drive to work in the next 2 weeks. People need to heat their homes in the next 2 weeks, and I want to help those people. And so I agree with you. Right now, we do need to get the price of gas and home heating oil down. We need to make sure that we have enough supply of those things to meet the demand that's coming from Americans. But that said, I can tell you, I can assure you, there are absolutely no restrictions to stop the oil companies in the United States from drilling more. They were drilling more in 2018 and 2019, and they chose to stop in 2020 and 2021 because demand went down, because we stopped buying the stuff. There's absolutely not 1 square inch of the United States where oil companies were drilling oil in 2019 where they cannot drill oil today because of anything that Joe Biden has done. And as for profits, ExxonMobil made about $23 billion in profits in 2021. And one reason they have been slow to drill on the land that they currently have, on the leases that they currently have, is because they kind of like the price of gas being this high. They like it because they make higher profits. And so we can be for the Keystone Pipeline. That's fine. We can be for drilling in the Arctic, and these are the things where Biden has said no to. But those things aren't going to put oil on the market for years. The Keystone Pipeline was only about 8% complete when President Biden halted construction. It would be years before we get anything from the Keystone Pipeline. The drilling in the Arctic that has been very controversial. Again, you can be for that, but we won't get a drop of oil from that until 2031. So in a sense, that's just as silly as saying everyone should have an electric car tomorrow. It will not help get gas prices down for years and years. What can be done is oil companies can start drilling on the hundreds and hundreds of unused leases that the federal government has already given them. There's nothing stopping them from doing that. And I want to make sure if we can't nicely encourage them to do that, I would like to force them to do that by saying you either use those leases or you're going to lose them. Thank you.
Thank you again, Congressman, and thank you to Carolyn for being a part of our forum. We've got time for one more question here. And folks, if you did want to get email updates from the Congressman's office, this is your last opportunity to press 7. Speak to an operator, give them your best email, and we'll keep you updated on these issues moving forward. Diana in New Providence has asked me to read this one. She asks, what happened to the COVID relief funds? Did they run out? Also, what happens to seniors that can't afford Medicare? Congressman, a couple of questions there from Diana.
Well, most of the COVID relief funds were approved and spent in 2020 and 2021. Those were emergency expenditures, as you know, and they helped a lot. We were able to provide those PPP loans to our small businesses, which allowed them to keep their employees on payroll, which enabled most of the mom and pop businesses in our small towns in New Jersey to survive the pandemic. We spent money on unemployment benefits of folks who weren't able to work in that time. We made the unemployment benefits more generous so that they could pay their bills and pay their rent. We had a moratorium on evictions, which helped renters particularly. We did the stimulus checks. We did the child tax credit for families with kids. It was very successful. We had this horrible economic crash in America, almost like the Great Depression, and yet we helped people come out of it with the same amount of money in their pockets, in some cases more money in their pockets than they had at the very beginning. Most of those programs have expired. Some of them I had hoped would be permanent, like the child tax credit. We cut the cost of health insurance significantly during COVID, and that's still in place until the end of this year. I hope that we make that permanent. That's a promise that I ran on, so I'm going to work really hard to make those savings more permanent. But we are moving to a different phase right now. We're coming out of the crisis. We're taking off our masks. Americans are going back to work. We've got lower unemployment than before the crisis started. And I want to make sure right now that we focus on keeping our economy moving and lowering costs and fighting inflation so that we protect the paychecks that we saved through all of those programs. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you again, Congressman, and I'd love to ask you for any closing thoughts in just a moment here. Before we get to that, I wanted to mention we have a couple other constituents who are going to require some follow-up from your office. So Susan in Bridgewater and Polly in Hunterton, you can expect a call from the Congressman's office. And for anybody else who needs assistance, I'll remind you where you can find that online. And I'll also remind you here that if you'd like to leave a voicemail message as we wrap up this call in just a minute here, you can do that and leave your name and contact information, a phone number, as well as whatever issue it is that you're dealing with and need assistance with if you do need the Congressman's office's assistance. So you can do that by staying on the line in a moment and leaving a message, or they can assist with accessing public benefits such as Social Security, Medicare, passports, visas, immigration and naturalization services, veterans benefits, or resolving issues with federal agencies. You can find that information online at malinowski.house.gov/casework. Again, malinowski.house.gov/casework, or stay on the line here and leave a message with your name, your contact information, and the issue that you're dealing with. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Congressman Malinowski to take us to the close.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for taking part in today's call and for sharing your concerns and the really excellent questions. I always say in my town halls, your questions become my priorities. I go back to Washington and try to find practical solutions to the problems that you raise with me. We've been successful on a lot of issues in the last few years. There's still quite a few challenges to come, and I hope I gave you a sense today of some of the practical solutions that I'm trying to pursue wherever possible on a bipartisan basis in Washington on your behalf. We're going to keep on doing these calls, and of course, town halls. I'm hoping we'll be doing more in person as we come out of the pandemic crisis. So there'll be a lot of opportunities for us to interact in the coming weeks and months. I always look forward to it. My favorite part of the job. So thank you so much for hanging out with us for an hour, and I can't wait to do it again soon. Bye-bye.